Mega trends. What are they about and how can investors make use of them? Giles Keating, head of the Credit Suisse Global Economics and Strategy Group, took some time to answer our questions. Giles, for the last 4 years, you and your team have been doing research on trends and megatrends. Now you've dedicated an edition of your research publication, The Global Investor, to megatrends. What's the difference between a simple trend and a megatrend?
Well, a simple trend typically goes on for perhaps 1 year, maybe 2 years, something like the current decline which the dollar seems to be going through. And it's driven by relatively short-term economic forces. By contrast, a mega trend lasts 10 years, maybe quite a lot longer than that. And it's driven by really fundamental forces, social change, the globe, the world changing, new innovations, new technologies, these kind of things.
In The Global Investor, you focus on 3 global mega trends: demographics, a multipolar world, and sustainability. Could you tell us about these themes, maybe starting with the demographics?
Well, the demographics, it's the explosion in the number of people around the world. We've really seen the fastest pace of population growth ever recorded in the second half of the 20th century, and it's still growing very, very rapidly. We're now at 6.5 billion people, headed towards 9 billion in the next few decades. And on top of that, of course, we've got ageing going on in the rich societies around the world. These really create enormous economic changes, social changes, create lots of challenges, but also lots of opportunities.
Why is the multipolar world one of the megatrends?
Well, the multipolar world means that we're moving away from the dominant power of the wealthier economies, and particularly the United States, over to a situation in which both economic and political power is more dispersed to a number of centres. Obviously, China becomes much more important, but also India, to some extent Brazil, and even Europe. Well, we don't quite know what's happening there, but again, the balance is changing. So really, this means for investors big opportunities. I think probably most investors are aware of the opportunities in China, in India, and the rest of Asia. It also, of course, means that some of the existing companies in the rich world can do very well, but also others of them may come under some kind of competitive threat.
And how does sustainability fit into the picture?
Well, sustainability deals with issues like climate change, like the need to spread some of the benefits of an expanding economy right down to the bottom of the pyramid through tools like microfinance. And of course, it fits very closely with both demographics, because it's all about the effects of that much bigger population on the world's resources. And of course, sustainability also fits with the mega trend of multipolar world, because it's to do with the way in which clearly we are moving to a world in which you're seeing a spread of production and wealth to new centres. And really, it's about dealing with the limited resources that exist in the world and finding innovations which can make use of those limited resources without damaging the environment. And that, it's enormously challenging, but again, it creates enormous potential opportunities for investors, whether it's looking at things like alternative energy or ways of saving power or other ways forward.
How can investors make use of this knowledge?
What investors can do, on the one hand, they can, of course, think about investing in individual companies that respond to that. Another way of doing it is to invest in some form of collective investment which deliberately tries to span across either one of the megatrends or indeed even span across all 3, all the way across the demographics, the multipolar world, and the sustainability. And there do now exist a number of ways of drawing those kind of trends together into single investments.
Now, if I wanted to invest in sustainability, or even better, in the aging of society, what exactly could I do?
Well, for example, you could buy shares in an alternative energy company, one perhaps that was connected with solar energy, or, for example, one that was perhaps connected with the lithium iodide batteries that are increasingly being used to power electric vehicles. And of course, there's still the problem of how the electricity gets generated. So you could look to something like, although this can be controversial, a company involved in nuclear power. So those are some of the examples that one could look to there. And then in terms of the aging population, you could look to some of the healthcare companies that make products that are related to the needs of an aging but quite financially secure generation, which is spending money on staying healthy and looking good.
You've also designed a pinboard, and you've put together things that are expected to disappear and things that will possibly be invented, such as artificial eyes. Can you tell us about the pinboard?
Well, this pinboard it's intended more for inspiration than to be a kind of direct forecast, but it's just to give people an idea about how the world is changing. So, for example, one of the things, or a couple of things we've got disappearing are fax machines, where I think there's a real risk perhaps within 10 years or so, they might well have disappeared. And then another example, we've got coins and eventually notes disappearing on the basis that people use to electronic money. At the same time, we've moved to the idea of some of the new innovations that may come in, and we really can't, of course, be sure. We don't really know. Artificial eyes, that's one example. The technology is going in that direction, and really I think that's the point of the pinboard, to just make us think a little bit more broadly about what might happen.
Now that sounds all very fascinating, but we're just coming out of a global recession. Isn't there a danger of all of this falling out of course?
I think there is a residual danger of that. Obviously, we did have the world's worst financial crisis for more than half a century, barely a year ago. And although things are starting to improve, they are coming up from a very, very low level with very high levels of unemployment and still enormous debt problems to be worked through. So these things do pose dangers. However, my view and the view of many of my colleagues at Credit Suisse is really that the measures that have been put in place by governments and central banks to stimulate the economy and protect the financial system, we think those are being very powerful in generating a recovery. We also think there's something of a self-sustaining recovery starting to take hold. That's only just beginning to be visible. We think it'll become much clearer over the next 6 to 12 months. And if we're right, then really I think the world could be growing pretty rapidly by the end of 2010. And I think that will provide a very good background for many of these mega trend investment themes that we've been just talking about.
Thank you, Giles. If you want to know more about these mega trends, you can order the print version of The Global Investor or download the PDF version from the Credit Suisse publication shop.